Diet, episode number 5. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for joining me again. Last week, we talked about the top 5 problems with intermittent fasting, and then I gave you the case to do it. Tonight, we're going to talk about the top 5 dietary myths out there, okay? This is just my list. Obviously, the list is debatable, but these are the top 5 myths I've heard throughout my lifetime. At the end, I want to give you some top 5 dietary truths to go along with these myths. Okay, so let's get right into it. Dietary myth number 1, fat will make you fat. Eating fat will make you fat. Not true, okay? So despite what you've heard from your doctor, eating fat doesn't make you fat, won't necessarily cause heart disease, okay? Fat is essential, protects our organs, provides energy, and is also really important for our hormones. Now, when fat, especially bad fat like trans fat, which you should avoid at all costs, when those bad trans fats are combined with a high sugar, high carbohydrate diet, we're going to have lots of inflammation. And of course, we're going to lead to things like heart disease. But fat alone does not cause that. It's the combination of a high sugar, high carb, high inflammatory diet that'll cause that, okay? Fat has been improperly demonized for that. Now, there are some bad fats, like I mentioned, trans fats, avoid that at all costs. Things like fats in cookies, pastries, crackers, vegetable oil, which is actually kind of confusing because you would think vegetable oil would be healthy because it says vegetable oil. Vegetables are healthy. Everybody knows that, right? Well, it's actually really high in omega-6, which is known to be very pro-inflammatory, which is why we want to avoid that, okay? The good fats are things like nuts, seeds, fish, eggs, avocados, avocado oil, olive oil, things like that will actually help our immune systems and help our hormone systems to have proper levels of these hormones and keep us healthy, okay? So myth number 1, fat does not make you fat, okay? Myth number 2, piggybacking off of that, is that cholesterol is dangerous, okay? Cholesterol is not dangerous by itself. Cholesterol is actually totally essential for our body, just like fat is, okay? Cholesterol is the precursor to almost every sex hormone we have, all right? Without those hormones, without the cholesterol needed for those hormones, along with vitamin D, our hormones and our reproductive organs would go down into the tank, and we see that a lot. I see that a lot here in practice, actually. Now, the other myth about cholesterol is that high cholesterol leads to heart disease, okay? Before we get into that, Ashley, I'm sorry, let's back up a second and talk about cholesterol in food. So my dad was actually told that he can never eat an egg again because he has high cholesterol. His doctor told him that. I explained to him, and what the research has shown, that dietary intake of cholesterol has actually very little to do with our blood cholesterol. I know it is counterintuitive, but the exogenous cholesterol, meaning the cholesterol we eat, has very little to do with raising the total cholesterol in our blood because the body makes cholesterol. That's the endogenous cholesterol. The body pretty much makes as much cholesterol as it needs. So it's been shown that the cholesterol we eat, for example, in things like eggs, raises our total cholesterol very minimally, all right? So there's exogenous, which is the cholesterol we eat, and the endogenous, which is the cholesterol our body produces. And we produce a lot more than we intake. Now, back to the heart disease cholesterol myth. Okay, so heart disease, what is that? Well, at the root of it is inflammation, right? What is inflammation caused by? Typically, again, a high carb, high sugar diet. Now, cholesterol is actually in the body to help bring inflammation down. It goes to the arteries and goes to the veins that have become oxidized and brings away that oxidation, brings away those bad cells, and helps protect the body. So when inflammation is high, cholesterol is going to be high as well. Saying that heart disease is caused by this cholesterol is like looking outside every time it's raining, seeing that it's raining, and you see people walking around with umbrellas and thinking, oh, geez, these umbrellas must be causing rain. Obviously, that's not the case, but we did the same thing with cholesterol. We saw high cholesterol in people with heart disease and thought, oh, geez, it must be the cholesterol. Turns out that's not the case. The cholesterol is actually there to support and protect us from inflammation. All right, moving on to dietary myth number 3, that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I'll give you one guess who started that. The guy's name was John Harvey Kellogg. Yes, that's right. The same Kellogg of Kellogg Cereal Company. Now, this guy, he was part of a religious group called the Seventh-day Adventists. And they had an agenda to basically desexualize the United States because they saw all this drinking and partying and promiscuity going on. So they wanted to push their food, their very bland, boring food, which they considered an aphrodisiac, to basically quell America's sexual desire with these boring bland bran flakes, essentially. That was their agenda, to desexualize the country. And this guy was very powerful. He got his agenda pushed through the government. He had friends in the FDA, and he got his cereal out there. That was his intention. That was the Seventh-day Adventist intention, is to basically quell Americans' sexual proclivity. He also was very against meat, so he was part of the vegetarian movement as well. Little known fact that the guy who started the breakfast company Kellogg had this agenda, right? Now, again, obviously it was to his advantage to have breakfast known as the most important meal of the day, so everybody would buy his products and would further push his agenda. The fact that one meal can be more important than any other meal throughout the day has absolutely no scientific backing whatsoever. In addition to that, it's been shown in the research over and over again that skipping breakfast really has no detrimental effects on weight loss effects or on performance, okay? Myth number 4, milk builds strong bones. Another ad campaign, right? Got milk? Guess who started that one? Dairy farmers. Surprise, surprise. So a 2009 study out of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition actually showed that the countries that consume the most dairy have the most bone fractures. So the exact opposite is occurring of what they're telling you. Milk does not build strong bones. Why? Well, even the dairy that's fortified with vitamin D and calcium is too acidic for the body to actually absorb it. Okay, we don't have the proper receptors to process this acid and absorb the calcium and the vitamin D. You're better off getting your calcium from things like nuts, seeds, and green leafy vegetables. Okay, so yet again, another example of something that's kind of been instilled into the American lexicon. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Milk builds strong bones. But there's been an agenda behind both those things, and there's no truth behind either of those claims. Another thing that's been kind of starting to be integrated is myth number 5, that because something is labeled organic must mean that it's healthier or connotes some kind of health benefit, which isn't true. First of all, those labels themselves are very loosely regulated. The only one you could really trust is the one that says 100% USDA organic. That one's good to go. The other ones can just have, 1/10 of it be organic and still label it as organic. Problem with that, again, is that just because it's organic doesn't mean it's healthy. Organic junk food is still junk food. Don't trick yourself into thinking that just because this pack of crackers or this bag of popcorn says organic means it's healthy or good for you or better for you, okay? It's not any better than the regular stuff. And the other claim of all natural, that's another label you see, that one means absolutely nothing, okay? You could put that on anything, and guess what? It'll sell more, but it doesn't mean anything. So please don't fall victim to these marketing strategies, because they work, okay? They definitely work. They're insidious. They get into your subconscious, and they'll make you think you're doing a good thing, but not necessarily true. You're more likely just paying more, unfortunately, okay? So those are the top 5 dietary myths. Number 1, fat will make you fat. Number 2, cholesterol is dangerous. Number 3, milk builds strong bones. Number 4, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And number 5, because it's labeled organic means it's healthier. None of those are true, okay? Now, let's do the reverse of that. So the top 5 dietary truths, okay? Number 1, calorie intake matters. Let me say that again. Calorie intake matters. And that's unfortunate because a lot of people don't want to believe that, all right? But it's been shown over and over and over again that in order to lose weight successfully over the long run, you need to be in a caloric deficit to do so. Doesn't mean you could be in a caloric deficit year round. Sometimes you need to be in maintenance. Sometimes you need a little bit of a surplus, okay? But at the end of the day, you need calories in to be less than calories out in order for you to lose weight. You could beat it for a short period of time, but in the long run, that's what really matters, okay? But notice I didn't say calories are all that matters, okay? Because food choice matters too. Every food we eat, every choice we make is either deciding to eat for health or deciding to eat for disease. What do I mean? Well, every bite of food is a signal to our cells, a signal to our genes. And people think that their genes run their lives because their mom had heart disease, their dad had cancer, their brother has diabetes. And while it's true that genes play a role, all genes do, all genetics do, they load the gun. But what pulls the trigger is diet and lifestyle, which leads me to my second point. My second dietary truth is that eating to control inflammation matters. So what are some of the most inflammatory foods? We have gluten, dairy, and soy. Those would probably be the top three. Now, gluten, we want to avoid gluten even if you're not gluten intolerant, because a lot of grains and breads and whole wheats that contain the gluten also have zonulin. And gluten and zonulin together will really punch holes in our intestinal lining. Now, we're supposed to have some permeability in our intestines, some holes, so to speak. But when gluten and zonulin keep coming in, as you keep ingesting all this gluten and zonulin and wheat and bread and grains, they're basically come in every time like the Kool-Aid man, knocking down the walls, punching huge holes in the wall, and everything starts to leak out of the intestines. And when the body recognizes that these particles are seeping through the intestines, so to speak, that's where the term leaky gut comes from. It triggers an immune response, and that immune response is pro-inflammatory and creates inflammation. This is where a lot of autoimmune disease is derived from. Now, the second thing would be dairy. Dairy is not good for a lot of people. More people can get away with it than the gluten and zonulin, to be honest. But again, dairy, highly inflammatory, creates a lot of inflammation, a lot of allergic reactions in people, and also will inhibit digestion. And anytime the digestion is inhibited, we're going to have inflammation as a result. And then the last one would be soy. Soy is known to be high in omega-3 or omega-6 fatty acid, which is pro-inflammatory, and also contains phytoestrogens, which are known to disrupt our endocrine receptors and also create a lot of inflammation themselves. Okay? Now, dietary truth number 3 is that tracking matters. Again, not something everybody wants to hear, but over and over again, the research has shown that the number one predictor of dietary success is having a food log, tracking your food. I know nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to track their protein, carbs, calories, fat, whatever the case may be, but it works, guys. And the research has also shown that it only takes 14 minutes a day to do once you get used to doing it, okay, once you get in the habit of doing it. I think 14 minutes a day for the most important thing to lose weight, pretty easy, pretty attainable. I think we could do that, okay? Dietary truth number 4 is that we need to eat in line with our evolutionary biology when we're hunter-gatherers, because that's the vast majority of our lifespan as humans, historically speaking, was as hunter-gatherer. It's only been pretty recent that we've been living in these modern societies close together. That's been since the advent of agriculture. Now, agriculture was amazing for societies, transference of ideas, technology, but really bad for human health. This is actually outlined in a book called Guns, Germs, and Steels by the author's name. I think his last name is Diamond. I'm not sure about his first name. Maybe Peter Diamond. Really good book. Check it out. Also mentioned in the book Sapiens, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Really goes into detail how this has impacted our health as humans. All these diseases we see today, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, even dental diseases, aren't found in the remains and the skulls and the skeletons of our ancestors, okay? They've only been around since the advent of agriculture, all right? So the more we can eat like our hunter-gatherers, better off we're gonna be. And then finally, dietary truth number 5 is that every diet should shoot get to the point where you only need to be compliant with it about 80% of the time. Okay, that way the 20% you can actually enjoy yourself. So things like weddings, parties, cookouts, things like that, time with family, time with friends. You're not always constantly stressed out and concerned about eating according to your diet, because if you're stressed out, guess what? You're not healthy. So in the pursuit of health, you can't sacrifice your mental state and well-being. Now, at the beginning, you may have to be 100% compliant. If you have a certain disease, chronic pain, you're really trying to, get a thyroid, for example, back online if it's been underactive for some years, you may have to be 100% compliant at first. But eventually the goal needs to be to get to the point where you only need to be compliant about 80% of the time. That way the rest of the time, the 20%, you can relax and have fun, because what is the point of life? Is it to be the most perfect, optimal version health-wise of yourself? Not necessarily. You want to have as much of that as possible, but also enjoy life at the same time, okay? No one wants to live to 200 years old if they're miserable for half those years, right? There's no point in that, okay? We're here. Let's make the best of it, all right? Okay, so the top 5 dietary truths in review. Calories matter, but again, they're not all that matters, because dietary truth number 2 is that inflammation matters as well, okay? Dietary truth number 3, tracking matters, because what gets measured gets improved. Quote by Peter Drucker, we believe. You know how quotes work. You never really know who said it. Dietary truth number 4, eating in line with our evolutionary biology matters. And number 5, you want to get to the point where you can be at that 80-20 rule, I like to call it. Okay? So I hope you guys liked today's podcast. If you have any questions, DM me. Please rate, review, subscribe on Spotify, YouTube. Give me a follow on there. And then if you know anybody who's struggling, you, yourself, a family member, a friend that could really use some more in-depth help, send them to my course, okay? It's on teachable.com, Doc Made Diet at teachable.com. You can find it in my Instagram bio. And if you use the code DMDPOD20 at checkout, you'll get a 20% discount. So once again, that's DMDPOD, P-O-D, 20 at checkout to get that 20% discount. That'll really help them out. The course is awesome, guys. It has everything you need to know to lose weight, to be anti-inflammatory for the rest of your life, okay? It has everything in there, walks you hand by hand, step by step through the process of eliminating the bad foods, introducing the good ones, has a bunch of recipes, methods, easy ways to make this easy, affordable, and convenient for everybody. I've got great results in that class. I hope to get that out to more people and get some success here. If you have any questions, go ahead, DM me, find me anywhere you can. I'm happy to answer all your questions. But that's it, guys. End of podcast episode number 5, top 5 dietary myths, along with top 5 dietary truths. Okay, guys, peace out. See you next week.